Okay, spoiler alert, this video is not only about private jets. There is a much bigger message that I really want you to take away from this video that will become clearer and clearer the closer to the end of this video that you get. Now, over the years, many well-known pastors and ministry leaders have been significantly criticized for owning private jets. And because we know the approximate value or cost of these private jets, many people have written these people off as if they are money hungry, greedy televangelists who are simply exploiting people out of their hard-earned money. Now, hold on for just a second. I promise we're going to get to the private jet conversation in just a moment. But before we do, I just want to explore a few reasons why many people have come to the conclusion that pastors or ministry leaders should not be affluent. And the first one is because they say, well, pastors should be humble. Now, that is true. Pastors should be humble. But the first thing that I'm going to say is humility just reserved for pastors? Or should all Christians be humble? Last I checked, it's not just pastors and ministry leaders that should be humble. Every Christian should be humble. In other words, this idea of being humble and being meek is not reserved for ministry leaders, that we are not exempt either. Now, the second thing I want to say about this idea of humility is the fact that nowhere in the Bible does it connect necessarily humility to how much money you make. Because I know a lot of people who make a ton of money. They're filthy rich and you would never know it. And they are the nicest, most humble people that you'll ever meet. And then I know some people who are flat broke. All right. They're very, very poor, but they are very, very cocky and arrogant. So to suggest that because someone has a lot of money, that they are therefore not humble would not be a proper assessment. Now, the second thing that people will say with regard to ministers is that, you know what, Jesus was poor, and so therefore ministers need to be poor too, because Jesus, if you want to be like Jesus, you know, you can't have a lot of money. Once again, aren't all of us supposed to be like Jesus? Not just pastors, not just ministry leaders, but besides that, when we look at many, many other Christian leaders or people in the Bible whom God clearly had his hand on, people like Job, people like David, people like Solomon, they were very, very wealthy. And even at times, God said, you know what, if this wasn't enough, I'll give you more. And so this idea of, you know, I should be poor and that will make me more like Jesus is once again just kind of a false assumption. Third thing, preachers should not be rich because many people in their congregation are not rich. Now, for this one, this is an easy one. Listen, pastors are not responsible for the financial condition of those who follow them, because some people might be rich because they made investments, or maybe they have an inheritance, or they just made good, solid financial decisions. And other people might be poor, maybe because they did not make necessarily the best decisions with their money or whatnot. So once again, that's kind of a false one as well. So now we get to the question, is it right for a pastor to have a private jet? Now, pay attention all the way through because, like I said earlier, you're going to understand where I'm going with this video. And I want to give you three questions. The first question is, what could the benefits be for a pastor to have a private jet? Well, the first one is just that, privacy, right? So if you are a public figure where everywhere you go, people are pulling at you, they're asking you for an autograph, they want to take selfies with you, they want to have time with you, they want to ask you the 50 million questions that they've always wanted to ask you, and you know what? You just don't want to be bombarded with that all the time. You want a certain level of privacy so that you can go where you want to go and not have to necessarily be around people who are bombarding your space and not giving you that privacy. That very well might be a valid reason for why you may want to get a private jet. Now, the second reason might be protection, right? So if you're a public figure, you may not want your family to be under that type of scrutiny. You may not want your wife or your children to be constantly around this type of thing. You want to protect them from this outside stimuli. That might be a reason. But this third one is probably going to be the one that's going to convince most people, and that's the fact that for convenience, right? I mean, let's be honest, if you travel a lot, I'm going somewhere, if you travel a lot, is it more convenient for you to go online and book your tickets, or just to go and get on your plane when you want to and just go and take off, right? I mean, okay, I'm gonna break it down and give you this illustration. For people who have a problem with pastors having private jets, are you riding the bus? No. The reason why you own a car and you don't ride the bus or take Uber and Lyft everywhere is for convenience. Listen, whenever you want to take your family to the amusement park across town, you don't get online and start looking at bus tickets. You got to figure out when the bus is going to come, worried about missing the bus, and you got to go to the bus station, put your kids on the bus, be around people that you may not know, and then you got to get back before the bus line stops running and all this. No, you go to your garage, you get in your convenient car that you purchased, and you go to where you want to be on your own time. Why? Because you decided to purchase a car instead of riding the bus or taking an Uber. So just as you are seeking privacy and you are seeking convenience by purchasing your own personal car, so you don't have to rely on anyone else, you can go and come when you want, you don't have to be bothered with people if you don't want to. In the same way, that might be a reason why a leader, or anyone for that matter, might want to purchase a private jet. Now you may say, Brother Allen, that's not the same because a private jet's going to be $60 million and that's extravagant. Be careful. And now you're starting to see where I'm going with this video. Be careful, because what you consider extravagant might not be extravagant to someone else. And what you don't consider extravagant, someone else very well may. So you might have a $60,000 SUV. And in your mind, that's not extravagant because you need to have a third row and you need to have that for your kids to get around and things like that. But someone else might look at you and say, you know what? You're living extravagantly because you could have purchased a much less expensive vehicle that still got you from point A to point B. You are living extravagantly because you have a $60,000 vehicle, not a $60 million jet. Or maybe you just bought your kids a $600 Xbox. And you're thinking, it's not the same. But someone else who's less fortunate, who can't afford that, is saying, wow, you spent $600 on an Xbox? That's living extravagantly. So we got to be careful. So before you pass judgment on one of these pastors who has a private jet, ask yourself the question, if I had the money to do this, would I purchase a private jet? And that leads me to question number 2, which is perhaps the most important one of this video. And that's the fact that who is actually purchasing this jet. Now, to be clear, because none of the stuff that I said probably makes any sense until we get to this point, I do not believe that the church should be responsible for purchasing a pastor his own private jet. Why? Because more than likely that guy is going to be using that jet for personal travel or for ministry travel to go to other ministries, other churches, and preach. How is that impacting the church? How is that affecting the church, right? It's not. I don't believe you should take people's hard-earned money that is supposed to go towards salaries, expenses, maybe a building campaign, or other things that need to make the church run to fund the private jet of the pastor. Here's where we get into it. But let's just say that pastor has taken time to invest his own money. Maybe he has a trust fund. Maybe he has an inheritance. And he has saved up his salary or whatever he's done. But he has another $40, $50 million in the bank that did not come from the church. Who are we to tell this man how he is supposed to spend his money or not? Any more than you want somebody telling you how you need to spend your money and what's too extravagant for you, or whether you should or should not get your kid those Jordans, or whether you should or should not take that trip to Hawaii, or you should or should not buy that Tesla that costs $80,000 or $100,000. You don't want anybody telling you that you shouldn't live an extravagant life. So who are we to tell someone else how they decide to spend their money? So to be clear, as long as the church is not purchasing these jets, they should be able to do whatever they want. The problem is, in most cases, the church is funding this, and that is where we go wrong. The third question is really quick, and that's the fact, is this pastor flaunting it? Do you see this person flaunting their riches, making other people feel bad because maybe they don't have as much? The Bible has a word for them. He says, teach those who are rich in this world not to be proud and not to trust in their money, which is so unreliable. Their trust should be in God, who richly gives us all we need for our enjoyment. Bible says we should enjoy our riches if God blesses us with that. He keeps going, tell them to use their money to do good. He says, do good things with it. They should be rich in good works and generous to those in need. Give it away. Always being ready to share with others. By doing this, they will be storing up their treasure as a good foundation for the future so that they may experience true life. So the real issue here is not whether or not a pastor or a Christian, for that matter, is rich. I don't believe God cares about that. The idea is, how are you stewarding what God has given you? And are you obtaining it honestly? But here is the whole point of the entire video, and if you stayed to the end, this is where I've been trying to go. Be careful that you do not project an expectation or a restriction on a pastor that you would not place on yourself. See, many of us have this idea that I, as a Christian, can get away with something, but my pastor can't. I can go to the club and shake my butt, but no, I better not see my pastor. No. The standard is the same. Now, yes, we, the teach, will incur stricter judgment, yes, but most of what you see in the Bible is the same expectation. The Bible says, be holy, for I am holy. The same expectations for the preacher as well as the pew. But here's really where I'm trying to go. Be careful about the judgment, and I'll leave you with this. Jesus says, do not judge so that you won't be judged, for you will be judged by the same standard with which you judge others, and you will be measured by the same measure you use. Why do you look at the splinter in your brother's eye, but don't notice the beam of wood in your own eye? The point is clear. Spend more time looking at your own life, looking at how you spend your money, looking at whether you are living extravagantly, whether you are living lavishly, whether you are doing good deeds with your money, whether you are sharing, whether you are applying biblical principles with the money that God has blessed you with, rather than simply looking at what someone has and immediately passing a judgment on them. Then ask yourself this question. If I had $1 million, would I buy $1 million home? If I had hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting around, would I buy a Tesla? If I had millions and millions of dollars and money was not an issue and I love to travel all over the world, let's say I had $1 billion, would I buy a private jet so I could have that convenience and that privacy? See, when you start to look at yourself first, and this goes with all of the relationships that you would have, this goes across the board for your life, this is great advice. When you look at yourself first, before you start to look at other people, you'll then be in a much better place to actually assess what might be going on in someone else's life. Give it some thought. Let me know your comments down below. I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.